Which is what if Naruto fell in love with Haku and kept it hidden forever? Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto Uzumaki, 12 years old, genin of Konohagakure no Sato, and village pariah. While the young blonde was happy to have finally become a genin, he was frustrated with his sensei, one Kakashi Hatake. The scarecrow of a man was supposed to be a jonin, and he'd proven it during the bell test, but besides that he'd barely taught them anything besides teamwork exercises, and he'd only taken them on D-rank missions. "You're late." Naruto and Sakura yelled at the man in tandem, which was becoming something of a ritual for all their team meetings, but this time instead of letting the man give another lame excuse, Naruto continued. "If you're always so late, can't you at least give us a cool ninjutsu to learn?" The blonde asked, barreling into the question at the surprise of his team. "Well, I suppose I could, but you kids aren't really ready." Kakashi began to attempt to placate the excitable blonde, but Naruto was having none of it. "Oh come on, sensei. Just one simple ninjutsu. There has to be something genin can learn." Naruto continued, insistent and sick of being told he wasn't ready for the kind of jutsu he wanted to learn, was attempting to compromise. At his attempts at compromising, Sasuke, the brooding Uchiha, spoke up. "The dead last has a point. Even I'm starting to doubt your abilities to teach." The blue-wearing genin butt in, which prompted Sakura to do the same. "Yeah, the academy only really teaches Bunshin, Kawarimi, and Henge. Surely you can teach us something." The pink-haired young girl exclaimed, eager to agree with Sasuke. Kakashi decided not to point out that Sasuke already knew at least one ninjutsu beyond those, since he'd likely learned it from scrolls scavenged from his now empty clan estates, if not been taught it before the massacre. All right, Kakashi said, attempting to placate his students. "I'll teach you the Shunshin if you all agree to practice it on your own time, but first we have to get to the mission office, can't be late." He said the last part with an audible grin that made his students, even Sasuke, glare at him and grit their teeth. With the deal struck and the timeline altered slightly, Team 7 made their way to the Hokage Tower. It had been less than a week, and Kakashi had kept his promise, teaching his students the basics of the simple Shunshin. The idea was simple enough, using chakra to force your body to move fast enough to flicker from view. Sasuke had picked it up fastest. As expected, Sakura was having trouble mostly with having enough chakra to practice it consistently, and, to everyone's surprise, she'd fallen behind Naruto. Naruto himself had the stamina to practice it enough that he was even keeping up with Sasuke, and having a fast movement technique had the blonde zipping all over the place. The most difficulty Naruto seemed to have was aiming himself, as he regularly overshot and slammed himself into obstacles. His performance of course pushed Sasuke to practice more, something Kakashi noted with pride. However, it seemed it wouldn't keep the hyperactive blonde occupied for long, as the prospect of yet another D-rank mission had Naruto yell in outrage. "Hell no, I want a cool mission for once." Naruto shouted at the Hokage, prompting Kakashi to sigh and lament his student being such a knucklehead. Although the silver-haired Junin wouldn't say it out loud, he knew part of Naruto's apparent disrespect towards the titled god of shinobi who was their cage was at least partially the fault of the Hokage himself for being such a kind figure in Naruto's life, and the fact the Hokage himself merely smiled in a grandfatherly manner instead of reprimanding him only confirmed this, as Iruka, a Chunin who was apparently somewhat close with the hyperactive blonde, was the one shouting at Naruto for disrespecting the leader of their village with his outburst. Although they didn't voice it, it was obvious that Naruto's team agreed with him about the missions they were undergoing. Kakashi, what do you think?" the old man asked, to which Kakashi could only shrug. "If you've got AC rank, I won't turn it down." The Jonin responded simply, both of them surprising Iruka, who was then told to bring in a man named Tazuna. Naruto was giddy at the prospect, muttering to himself about finally rising through the ranks, until Kakashi and Sakura explained the ranking system to him and he realized that AC rank wasn't all that much more cool than AD rank. Soon enough, Tazuna, an old man with a bit of a gut, came in, holding a half-empty bottle of sake at what Kakashi was pretty sure was still late morning. "This is my protection. These kids look like super brats, especially the short one with the stupid face." "Are you really ninja?" the client said, which indicated to Kakashi he was not just drunk, but not used to dealing with ninja. Naruto was laughing. "Haha, who is the short one with the stupid face?" he asked, looking to see which of his teammates just got insulted more, only to realize they were both struggling not to smile and he was shorter than both of them, which meant Kakashi had to grab the back of Naruto's jumpsuit to stop him leaping at Tazuna. "Don't kill the person we're supposed to protect," Kakashi reprimanded lazily. "Besides which, I assure you, Tazuna-san, my genin are more competent than they seem, and I myself am an elite Junin," he continued, since Tazuna seemed nervous. "I am the super expert bridge builder, Tazuna. I expect you to provide me super protection until I get back to my country and complete the bridge," the drunken man said. So began the mission to protect the bridge builder. Naruto was certain of one thing: the mission to Nami had been an absolute disaster. Knowing the Shunshin really hadn't helped at all against the opponents they'd been fighting, and even learning tree walking had only given him enough chakra control to use it to get him in the ice mirrors, which had caused more harm than good apparently since it had gotten Sasuke killed. Worst of all, Naruto couldn't even avenge his fallen teammate, even if he was in, because the enemy was someone who had been nice to Naruto. Hearing Haku's story, Naruto had been near numb. It was sad for sure, and Naruto felt for the guy. And the worst part was that Naruto recognized that Haku, as damaged as the enemy shinobi was emotionally, was kinder to Naruto than anyone besides maybe Iruka. Even worse was how similar they apparently were, if Haku was telling the truth. Naruto-kun, please, Haku began, interrupting the blonde Genin's thoughts. Kill me, the effeminate shinobi asked of Naruto. Naruto himself was shocked at the request, although it almost sounded like a demand. Please hurry up and kill me. Haku asked again. Naruto continued to stand there. Why are you hesitating? Haku asked, and Naruto finally reacted. I don't understand. Is being strong the only reason for you to be alive? Naruto shouted, looking for a way out of this situation, something other than fighting. You could have been acknowledged for something else. He continued, more subdued. The day I met you in the forest, I thought you were like me. You should be able to understand. Haku said with tired eyes, his words surprising Naruto. I'm sorry that you will have to stain your hands. He finished. Is this the only way? Naruto asked, trembling with anger at the whole situation. Yes. Haku answered simply. Naruto steeled his resolve and drew a kunai. Please, fulfill your own dreams. Haku requested. Naruto swallowed the lump in his throat at those words and glanced back at Sasuke, lying lifeless with Senbon in his neck. Sasuke also had a dream. Naruto said, pausing for a moment. If we met under different circumstances, we might become friends. He said sadly before running at Haku. Thank you, Haku said, accepting Naruto's charge with closed eyes, seeming to accept death. At the last moment, Haku jolted, eyes widening, and he grabbed Naruto by the attacking arm. Confusion was evident on the blonde boy's face. Sorry, Naruto-kun. I can't die yet, Haku said frantically, moving to make a hand sign. In an instant Haku disappeared in a Shunshin, unsure of what else to do. Naruto growled, giving his confusion to anger. He made his own hand sign to Shunshin after Haku. Senbon pierced summoning scroll, and lightning wreathed hand pierced flesh. The mist cleared and everyone who could see what was happening was shocked. Kakashi's nin dogs, that had been holding Zabuza pin, disappeared. Zabuza and Kakashi were splattered with blood. Haku, to his own shock, had been tossed to the ground. Sakura and Tazuna were both staring in abject shock through the clearing mist at the sight of Kakashi, with his hand going through Naruto's right shoulder from behind. My future was death. Wrong again, Kakashi, Zabuza said with a dark laugh as he reached for his sword. I sure picked up a useful tool. Zabuza bragged, and Kakashi forced himself to move, realizing Zabuza meant to cut through both himself and Naruto, but he need not have bothered, as an ice mirror suddenly jumped in the way of Zabuza's blade, surprising both Zabuza and Kakashi. What's the meaning of this, Haku? Zabuza demanded as Kakashi checked Naruto's vitals. The blonde boy was still alive. To Kakashi's shock, his lung had been hit and his breathing ragged. The boy seemed confused that he'd been hit at all, and Kakashi suspected a genjutsu had tricked the boy, if not for Haku's ice jumping to his defense just now. I'm sorry, Zabuza-san, my body moved on its own. Haku responded with uncertainty, mirroring the words of the Uchiha earlier. Zabuza seemed concerned by the answer and tone Haku had given. Kakashi meanwhile had a different problem. He couldn't fight Zabuza or perform first aid for Naruto with his arm stuck through Naruto, but if he took his arm out he would need to work fast to save Naruto's life, and Zabuza was still in action. Worse still, Haku was right there and Sasuke was nowhere in sight, and Kakashi knew Sakura couldn't keep up with these opponents. So Kakashi was staring at Haku to see what he'd do. Haku got up from the ground onto his knees and stared blankly at Naruto, barely realizing from the confusion in Naruto's eyes that the smaller boy had not intended to take the blow for him. Haku was quite certain that with a wound like that, in this situation, Naruto had effectively killed himself to stop Haku from killing himself to save Zabuza, and all Haku had managed to do in return was save the life of the sensei of the younger ninja, the sensei who was still technically in battle with Zabuza. Haku? Zabuza questioned again, confused by Haku's continued inaction. Oh, what the hell is this? A new voice on the bridge interrupted everything. You can't even control your own subordinates. What a mess. The bridge builder isn't dead yet, and the only casualty seems to be self-inflicted by your opponents. Some demon of the hidden mist you turned out to be. The voice patronized arrogantly. The mist cleared more, revealing Gato and an army of thugs and mercenaries. What the hell is the meaning of this, Gato? Zabuza asked, deciding to shelve the issue of Haku's insubordination for now. Haku didn't, or couldn't, tear his gaze away from the wound Naruto had sustained. Well, you missing ninja are such an arrogant and annoying bunch to work with, expensive too. Gato answered, gesturing with his good hand to the army backing him up. These fine gentlemen come at a fraction of the cost, and I bet they'll actually get the job done unlike you blowhards. I should have known ninja were all talk. He continued. Don't you dare underestimate shinobi. A voice wet with blood called out, enraged but raspy. Haku's eyes widened at seeing Naruto suddenly spring to life in anger, and Zabuza glanced over at him too to wonder just what the hell the kid was actually made of. Well, seems my contract is over. Zabuza said suddenly, seeming to have come to a decision, so our fight is over, tend to your brats. He told Kakashi. Sakura, bring me a medkit, now. Kakashi ordered at those words, Tazuna get over here too. He added quickly, aren't you ninja acting too arrogant again? I don't think you realize the situation you're in. Gato called out angrily as Sakura and Tazuna moved to follow orders. Stop wasting your time trying to save the life of that worthless blonde shit. He started ranting, only to be cut off by his own scream of pain and fear as a pair of senbon went through the muscles in his right leg, knocking him on his. Not another word. Haku intoned coldly, glaring at the shipping magnate with hate-filled eyes. Zabuza's own eyes narrowed, wondering just what the hell had happened in their fight for the situation to have turned out like this. With the medical supplies, Kakashi was working fast, giving Naruto painkillers before removing his arm from the wound and working fast bind the wound with bandages soaked in disinfectant. Will Naruto be okay? Sakura asked when she recovered from the shock enough to ask. He'll be fine, Kakashi answered, much to the shock of everyone who could hear him, except Naruto himself who seemed barely aware of the situation at this point. Thank goodness, but where's Sasuke? Sakura asked. I couldn't bring myself to kill him. Haku answered, causing Zabuza to scoff, your other team member is in a death-like state further up the bridge. Haku explained, unable to bring himself to look at the Konoha ninja. You damn ninja, can't you kill anyone? Gato shouted, earning another senbon in his leg for the outburst. Arg, would you kill them already? The short businessman yelled the demand to his army. Quit putting holes in our paycheck. One of the thugs yelled as the army surged towards them, only to stop as the first line of them was cut down before they could react by one swing of Zabuza's blade. There's just one of him. Another mercenary shouted as the bridge became a battleground and Zabuza proved the difference between a shinobi and a regular warrior, Haku running interference with senbon to strike at any who attempted to surround Zabuza. Kakashi finished bandaging Naruto. Sakura, go check on Sasuke. If he is in a death-like state then remove the senbon from his neck and begin standard first aid when he wakes up. Tazuna, keep Naruto's upper body elevated. The Jonin ordered, standing and drawing a kunai after giving Naruto to Tazuna. Gato meanwhile had been picked up by one of his hired swords and was retreating to the back of the army, promising more and more money to whoever could kill Zabuza to keep said army fighting. Despite further promises of wealth, the mercenaries were getting demoralized when Kakashi put his kunai in Gato's neck with a shunshin. Kakashi left the kunai behind and used kawarimi to avoid getting cut up by the angered bodyguards. He killed our meal ticket. One shouted as Kakashi and Zabuza stood against them, the fighting pausing as the mercenaries began to break. A crossbow bolt hit the bridge, the hero always arrives late. Inari's voice shouted from the other side of the bridge. Zabuza let the mist clear fully to reveal the situation, showing that the citizens of Nami no Kuni had formed a militia and rallied behind a child. With that, the remaining mercenaries decided that even if they could get past the ninja still standing, it would not be worth it to have to cut down the militia, even if it was untrained and shoddily armed with farming tools and knives. The rest of Gato's army broke, retreating. Zabuza holstered his kubikiribocho and turned to Kakashi. Hataki, we need to talk. The missing nin of Kiri said. Haku approached, head down in apparent shame. Oh, what about? Kakashi asked flippantly. Your village is clearly soft on kids. Zazuba began as he glanced towards Naruto, then glanced towards Haku. A blade with a soft heart would do well there. He finished and Haku tensed up at his words. No, Haku began, cut off by Kakashi's response. You can't expect Konohagakure to just snatch up an illicit shinobi from a neutral foreign land during peacetime, the Konoha Jonin said as he lowered his headband back over his Sharingan eye. Away from them, the citizens of Nami were helping Sakura with Sasuke and Inari was asking Tazuna about Naruto's condition. Haku isn't in the bingo book, and he was never technically in the Kiri ninja program. Zabuza said simply, an immigrant with obvious shinobi training is not something even I can slip by the gates. I'd have to bring him before the Hokage. Kakashi explained, noticing Haku's eyes were watering as the boy looked at Zabuza in shocked dejection. As long as you keep my name out of it, I'm sure your village would consider him a boon. Zabuza responded. Zabuza-san, please. Haku tried. Quiet, Haku, and get that tremor out of our voice. You, Zabuza began before looking away. You're a good blade, but you're too damn soft for this life. Besides, I can't have my weapons owing their lives to another ninja. Go be useful to that blonde brat before he dies. The missing nin ordered gruffly. Naruto will be fine. I'm sure he'll make a full recovery. Kakashi said as Haku turned and walked slowly to where Naruto was resting. Is that all? Kakashi asked Zabuza, who nodded and disappeared. Kakashi moved towards where Naruto was with Tazuna, catching up to Haku who was checking on Naruto mechanically. How? I heard him earlier. His lung. Haku mused, surprised by Naruto's steady breathing. He heals fast. Kakashi interrupted. Haku turned to look up at Kakashi, surprised that the man was even answering him. Haku's eyes gave Kakashi pause. There was confusion at first, almost curiosity, then nothing. Haku turned back to Naruto, silent. Kakashi frowned under his mask, then took Naruto from Tazuna. I'll get Sakura to help Sasuke back to your place if he can stand. The man told Tazuna. Go home with your mother, Inari. Tazuna said to the boy, who was relieved to hear Naruto would be fine. I need to get this bridge cleaned up, and hopefully recruit some people to help me finish it. The old man explained, standing up and stretching. Inari nodded and ran back to his mother and the militia, ensuring everyone that Naruto would be fine and talking up how much of a hero the blonde was. Kakashi followed long enough to get to Sakura and saw her still carefully removing Sanbon from Sasuke, who was now awake. Haku followed Kakashi and Sasuke looked up in surprise. Kakashi? Sasuke asked, moving his eyes between his sensei and the fake hunter nin. Fighting is done, Sasuke. I'll explain more at Tazuna's place. Help him home, Sakura. Kakashi said, leading his genin team somewhere safe to debrief them on the odd situation. Kakashi had explained the situation to Sasuke and Sakura, then explained further details that Haku had not been aware of. Getting a foreign shinobi to immigrate into Konohagakure no Sato would not be easy. The biggest issue was truly the matter of Haku's training. Although he had acted as a missing nin, he'd never gone through official Kurigakure shinobi training or been processed through them, and he'd maintained discretion while working with Zabuza. An unknown like Haku entering a hidden village full of shinobi was asking for trouble unless he tried to join them, and Konoha wasn't exactly known for snatching up random ninja from across the world outside of wartime. Since there wasn't a war, applying for refugee status would be difficult, but due to Kurigakure performing purges and his own Kekkei Genkai, it was probably his best chance. The downside of refugee status was that if any spies obtained information about his refugee status or Kurigakure found out some other way, it was likely they might risk war to come after him, so it was likely his appeal for refuge would be denied. Haku himself was kneeling next to an unconscious Naruto the day after the battle, changing the younger boy's bandages and holding his upper body slightly off the ground to do so. The Hyoden user couldn't stifle a gasp at what he saw. Kakashi had changed the bandages just last night, yet the scabbing of the injury was almost complete. Haku cleaned the wound with a cloth and a bucket of hot water, assuming for the moment that Kakashi had performed some Iryo ninjutsu to get Naruto up and moving sooner, but this assumption was floored as Haku watched the injury mend even as he cleaned it. The young ninja had never heard of Iryo ninjutsu that continued to work without chakra and wondered at the wound. He noticed Naruto stirring and wasn't sure if he should even reapply the bandages. The wound wouldn't fully close for a bit, but it had already fully stopped bleeding, and ripping bits of cloth from the wound every time he changed bandages would only irritate the injury. Haku decided to bind the wound later, after it scabbed over more and the scab had dried, to protect the healing flesh from ripping away by being rubbed against clothing. Naruto opened his eyes and looked confused. What? Haku? He asked, trying to remember what had happened. Your friend, Sasuke Uchiha, is alive. I am sorry for deceiving you. Haku said, bowing and sounding truly regretful. Naruto just looked more confused before his eyes widened in recognition and he shot up out of Haku's surprised grip. Sasuke is. The blonde started, only to wince and reach for his shoulder, looking surprised at the nasty but healing wound. Haku was shocked Naruto even had the energy to move. He'd used plenty of Kage Bunshin during their fight. Haku wondered if it had anything to do with that red chakra but put his questions away for now. The Uchiha is fine, please take it easy. Haku told Naruto, putting the bloodied cloth in the bucket of water next to them. I'm amazed you're even alive. I'd heard having large amounts of chakra tends to grant a shinobi more endurance, but I've never seen someone take a hit like that and actually recover. He explained, wondering if Naruto had some kind of Kekkei Genkai of his own. Well, Naruto is an Uzumaki. Both boys turned to the door at Kakashi's words. Their bodies naturally recover by expending chakra, and Naruto has chakra to spare. Kakashi explained briefly, surprising Naruto who hadn't known that at all. Haku noted the surprise on the face of the younger ninja. What happened? Naruto asked. You jumped in front of an A-rank assassination jutsu. Kakashi said bluntly. Naruto looked taken aback. After this, Gato showed up with an army and started mocking and taunting Zabuza Momochi. As it turns out, Gato never intended to pay the missing nin at all. With his job null and void, the battle between us and Zabuza ended. Kakashi continued, Zabuza Momochi also requested something of me, and I told Sasuke and Sakura already. He added, causing Haku to look down, attempting to hide the sorry and unshed tears. Zabuza Momochi requested that any mention of an accomplice be left out of the mission report. Also, this is Haku, who may be attempting to immigrate to Konohagakure no Sato. You seem to know each other already. The Jonin continued, the last part sounding accusatory. When Naruto made no attempt to defend himself, Kakashi moved to leave. Well, Haku has been watching over you and offered to change your bandages. I won't be far. The Cyclopean scarecrow finished as he left the room. Naruto looked at Haku, still apparently confused. Haku didn't look up but did draw a kunai by the blade, holding the handle out towards Naruto. This is yours, Haku said, and Naruto narrowed his eyes, crossing his legs and shifting his right arm into his lap to rest his shoulder as he reached out to accept the handle with his left hand. Haku let go of the kunai and dropped his hands into his own lap, still refusing to lift his gaze to meet Naruto's. Soon enough, Naruto was staring at Haku, wondering if the older boy, and he had to remind himself that Haku was a boy, would ask Naruto to kill him again. Naruto hoped not, and was glad Sasuke was alive. Haku was surprised he hadn't been searched for weapons before being allowed to watch over Naruto, but assumed the Konoha Jonin was just keeping an eye on him. Soon the silence became awkward to Naruto. Are you going to be okay? He asked Haku, not sure what else to say really. It didn't seem to be the right thing as Haku tensed up, but it did get the boy to lift his gaze and finally meet Naruto's concerned eyes with his own shocked ones. You took an assassination jutsu, and you're asking if I am okay? Haku asked, truly baffled by Naruto. Outside of line of sight, Kakashi wasn't sure whether to be proud of Naruto's empathy or concerned about his mental state. Well, yeah, you heard Kakashi-sensei, I'll be fine. Naruto said bluntly. I didn't know I could heal like that though, it doesn't seem as cool as your ice or that Sharingan thing. He continued, looking at his wound and learning then that he could watch the injury shut in real time. Haku was unsure how to respond, surprised that Naruto thought his power was cool. The only person who ever liked his power was Zabuza, and he'd called it useful. Most people considered it scary, dangerous, or worth killing him over, and it was even more flattering that Naruto had put it on the same pedestal as one of the legendary dojutsu of Konoha. Eventually Haku determined how to respond to the question Naruto had actually asked. I think I will be fine. He said in a sad tone. It still felt like Zabuza had tossed him aside, but the way Zabuza and Kakashi were wording things and Naruto himself made the boy feel a bit better about it. Oh good. So you're coming back to the village with us? Naruto asked. I suppose I will try. I am unsure how I should go about such things. A foreigner with existing ninja training trying to immigrate into a hidden village is just asking for trouble. Haku answered, about to start listing his options. I'm sure I can convince Hokage Gigi to let you in. Naruto interrupted, surprising Haku not just with his desire to get Haku into his village, but with the way he referred to the legendary Sandaime Hokage as a grandpa instead of a lord. Gigi? Haku asked, beginning to suspect that Naruto may not just desire to be Hokage, it could be he was being groomed for it or desired the position out of familial duty. Yeah, he's nice to me and I've known him since I was a kid, so I call him that. I'll just explain that you're my new friend so he lets you into the village. Naruto said, almost convincing Haku that it really would just be that easy. Haku did also register that Naruto was in a position to refer to the leader of the village with the kind of honorific reserved for grandfathers despite apparently not actually being related. Lastly, Haku registered that Naruto was already calling him friend, but wasn't sure what to think of that development. I don't think it's quite that simple. A Kage must consider the entire village. Even if you vouch for me, I am an unknown and I doubt I can hide my training from an entire hidden village. Haku began. It would probably be better if I begged refugee status, so they know of my cursed blood. He explained, looking down again. Don't call it that, Naruto exclaimed, surprising Haku into looking up again. I don't care if you have to be a refugee or whatever, but your blood doesn't make you less of a person. I will get you into the village. I'm going to be Hokage, so I'll need to protect everyone in the village one day anyway, so you have to live there too. The blonde explained, and Haku simply blinked as he tried to process the logic behind Naruto's words. What? Haku asked. He thought he got it but still couldn't make sense of why Naruto would mean what he was thinking. You said that people are strongest when they protect people precious to them, right? Naruto asked. Despite those not being Haku's exact words, he nodded. Since it was basically the same sentiment, well then you have to live in Konohagakure no Sato so I can be stronger when I'm Hokage and protecting it. Naruto explained again, and Haku's brain skipped over a step as he contemplated what Naruto was saying. On the third mental run-through of Naruto's words, it actually clicked that Naruto not only thought that protecting a village meant protecting every single person in said village, but Naruto wanted Haku to be one of the people in said village because Haku was already important to Naruto. You want me? Haku began to ask. Yes. Naruto interrupted with conviction. Haku widened his eyes. He wasn't sure if Naruto was answering the question as he had heard it or anticipated the end of the question, but how it sounded made Haku flush and look down. Then, I shall help you achieve your dream, Naruto-kun. Haku said after deciding not to ask the younger boy for further clarification, and Naruto grinned because he could hear Haku's smile in his voice. Soon enough Naruto was bandaged back up and went downstairs, followed by Haku, and saw Sasuke and Sakura sitting at the table. How are you already up? Why are you letting him walk around? Sakura shouted, the first one to notice them and still shaken up from the hit she'd seen Naruto take. Sakura was smart. She knew almost anyone should have died from the hole that had been put in Naruto. Kakashi-sensei said I'll be fine. Naruto answered. He also said that Uzumaki heal by expending chakra. How cool is that? I'm unstoppable. The excited blonde bragged with a laugh. I didn't know Uzumaki had a Kekkei Genkai. Sasuke spoke up, confused by this new information. Well, it's not actually a Kekkei Genkai. Kakashi answered, coming down the stairs after Naruto and Haku. It sounds like a recovery jutsu to me. Sasuke responded. Yeah, there's no way I'd be up and walking around by now without assistance. Sakura agreed with Sasuke eagerly. Well, there aren't any Uzumaki left to my knowledge. Naruto's the only one in Konohagakure no Sato, so I guess you can call it whatever you want. Kakashi told them. Anyway Sakura, why aren't you watching the bridge? Sasuke needs his rest, so guard duty is on you for a bit. He changed the subject. Chizuna-san came back for lunch, and he invited some of his new workers. Sakura explained. Then they got drunk and Tsunami tossed them out, so Chizuna-san is washing up to get back to work. She finished, looking exasperated. Kakashi just laughed. Well, the tyrant lording over the land is slain, so the village is probably in high spirits. The man tried to placate Sakura by excusing their behavior. You bet we're in super high spirits. Chizuna called out, coming from down the hall. Don't worry, we'll be done with the bridge in a couple of weeks, now that the whole town is in on the super bridge project and we're eager to get this done. Without Gato's super stupid taxes, people can afford more food too. Chizuna explained happily, pulling on his tools and making for the door. Sakura stood up to follow him, glancing reluctantly back at Sasuke as she went. So, how did the dead last actually beat you? Sasuke asked Haku once they'd gone, taking in the visible responses as he did. Kakashi glanced at them without giving much away. Naruto took offense if the way he tensed up was any indication, and Haku shivered with fear. Haku's response interested Sasuke the most. I'm not actually sure. Haku asked, remembering the red chakra and looking at Naruto to see if he'd have a response. Kakashi remembered the feeling of the malevolent chakra of the kitsune and watched to see what Haku and Naruto would say about it. I'm just that good, Naruto bragged, hiding what he didn't want to reveal with bravado. Sasuke snorted, which earned him a glare. What was that red chakra? Haku asked curiously. Another Uzumaki thing. He guessed, looking to Kakashi to see if the oldest ninja in the room had a response. Sasuke narrowed his eyes at that, wondering if Naruto knew some kind of Kaden jutsu. Oh, that was, yeah, something to do with Uzumaki, right Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked, clearly uncertain. Now all eyes were on Kakashi. Nope, not a clue. Kakashi answered with a grin, deciding to mess with Naruto a little, but also to tease Sasuke, and because he wasn't technically allowed to say the actual reason. It was supposed to be a village secret after all. Some new Kekkei Genkai then. Haku pondered. Your eyes turned red, and those marks on your cheeks seemed to turn thicker. I swear you even had claws. You got much stronger and faster. You broke my mirrors with your fist. The Hyoden ninja said. Sasuke frowned, since it sounded like a more intense version of the Inuzuka clan Hiden jutsu. Sasuke briefly wondered if Naruto was a mix of Uzumaki and Inuzuka, but Kiba had never shown much familiarity to Naruto in the academy, besides skipping class together with Shikamaru and Shoji occasionally when they were younger, and the Inuzuka Hiden jutsu weren't Kekkei Genkai either. Sasuke didn't think Kiba would have taught Naruto his clan's Hiden jutsu either. I wouldn't worry about it, Kakashi said, causing Sasuke to narrow his eyes at the man. Yeah, probably nothing. Naruto agreed quickly, but was much worse at lying than Kakashi, and it was obvious to all that Naruto did not like this subject. You do know what it was? Sasuke accused the blonde. No, Naruto lied. You suck at lying dead last, just come out with it. Sasuke demanded. If it's some kind of Hiden, it's not like I'll ask you to teach it to me. The Uchiha added, wondering if that was the issue. It's not even something I can teach you, idiot. Naruto shot back, angering Sasuke. Well, I don't even know what the hell it is. Sasuke responded. Alright, that's enough, Sasuke. Naruto clearly doesn't want to talk about it. Kakashi interrupted smoothly. You know what it is too then? Sasuke asked, turning his gaze back to Kakashi and narrowing his eyes to look for any kind of tell. Kakashi didn't respond. Naruto-kun, whatever it is, I will not change my mind about helping you. Haku said, attempting to calm Naruto down and also growing curious as to what this was. Naruto took a few breaths to calm himself. Alright. You want to know, Sasuke? He asked, do you know what happened the day I was born? Sasuke frowned at that, trying to remember Naruto's birthday. What does the Yondaime Hokage killing the Kyuubi no Kitsune have to do with this? He asked, pretty sure the fact the two events shared a date was the only reason he even knew the blonde boy's birthday. You can't kill them, Naruto responded. Haku's eyes widened as the pieces clicked into place. Jinchuriki. Haku whispered in surprise. Sasuke and Kakashi both looked at him, Kakashi to gauge his response and Sasuke confused at the word. The Biju can only be sealed, never killed, and adult chakra networks can't survive the process. Naruto continued, this time Sasuke's eyes widened in recognition. You? Sasuke asked suddenly, the Kyuubi was sealed in you. He clarified his question, still processing what that would actually mean. So that red chakra, that's why it looked like a fox for a moment. Haku said, no wonder. That chakra must have enhanced your healing, and as soon as you stopped being angry all the intensity was gone. He continued, looking at Naruto with shock as Naruto stood there and looked down to avoid meeting anyone's gaze. Sasuke was surprised and concerned, but he could tell that revealing this information bothered Naruto. That explains it. No way a dead last could do better than me without monster-level assistance. He jibed to snap Naruto out of it. What was that? I'll kick your without that damn Kitsune helping. Naruto shot back, his melancholy replaced by anger in an instant. Sasuke just scoffed, glad despite himself to have Naruto back to somewhat normal. Well, that's all well and good. Kakashi interrupted, but Naruto just revealed an S-class secret. He said, looming over the blonde boy, who gulped at that since he'd actually forgotten in the moment. Hey, isn't it my secret anyway? The blonde asked, backing away from Kakashi who was giving off a scary aura to intimidate the boy. The secret concerns you, but it isn't exactly yours to give. Telling Sasuke is one thing, but Haku isn't even a member of Konohagakure, and either way is against the Sandaime Hokage's law. Kakashi explained, continuing to loom over Naruto until Haku leapt between them. I won't tell anyone. Haku interrupted, understanding the implications of giving away an S-class secret and hurrying to defend Naruto from punishment. I knew something was up, and I'm the one who needled it out of him. Sasuke piped up. Besides, I'll keep it quiet too. He added. Kakashi's grin was visible even under his mask from the way his visible eye crinkled. Oh good. Well, I'll go check on Sakura then. The man said, dropping the scary act and leaving while whistling, hands in his pockets. Sasuke and Haku both sighed. Thanks, Naruto said quietly. He was happy both of them had defended him despite knowing about the Kyuubi but still nervous about what they thought of him now. Sasuke frowned. Damn, how long until I can get back to training? He suddenly asked Haku. I thought I had the lead over Naruto, only to find out he's got the power of a chakra no Bakemono. I might have him beat in skill by miles, clearly, but I can't have him overtaking me with raw power by so much or it won't matter. He explained, putting down Naruto's skills to get the blonde to stop being such a downer. It worked since Naruto suddenly looked up with an offended and angry expression. It'll be a week, I'm sorry. Haku said, suddenly aware that the two boys were genin. He wasn't even sure what rank to put them in, but assumed C rank. Individual genin being C rank was uncommon according to Zabuza, but not exactly rare. Sometimes a ninja gained power before being considered mature or skilled enough to lead other squads. Knowing what he knew of Konohagakure no Sato's ninja academy, he figured that couldn't be the case unless Naruto and Sasuke graduated early. Great, Sasuke groused, reaching up to rub his bandaged neck while glaring at Haku who had caused the injury. Ha, well I heal fast, so I'll start training way before you, then you'll be the one who gets outpaced, asshole. Naruto exclaimed, pointing at Sasuke while grinning widely. It'll take you a lot more than 2 weeks of remedial training to catch up to me, dead last. Sasuke retorted, switching his glare from Haku to Naruto in an instant, but he hadn't missed the guilty look in Haku's eyes. We'll see about that. Haku will help train me to get way better than you. Naruto shot back. Right? He asked Haku, suddenly looking nervous. I said I would help you achieve your dream, Naruto-kun. I would be honored to teach you some of what I know. Haku said with a smile and a bow that embarrassed the blonde, after your shoulder is better. He added, reminding Naruto that while he was swiftly recovering, he was injured too. Sasuke switched from a glare to a frown as he looked between Haku and Naruto, but shrugged and turned away from the conversation after deciding Naruto probably wouldn't catch up fully anyway, and that at least if Naruto got more skilled he'd be more used the next time they had to fight someone like Haku. The Uchiha didn't want to think about it, but he knew the only reason he was alive was because Haku didn't have it in him to kill an opponent he could defeat with non-lethal power, and he didn't like that Haku had the skill to defeat him without lethal intent. After a day's rest, Naruto and Haku were walking out towards one of the beaches near the bridge. Despite the explanation for Naruto's recovery speed, Haku was still shocked that by morning Naruto was out of the bandages with only scar tissue remaining and insisting that he would be ready for training after breakfast. Haku knew of Iryo ninjutsu. Unfortunately, without anyone to teach him, he didn't know how to perform any, so he and Zabuza had relied on basic first aid and wilderness survival skills, but he knew what Zabuza could teach him about Iryo ninjutsu, so he knew that the kind of recovery ability the Uzumaki had must cost a lot of chakra. Naruto was technically still healing and he wanted to train. Kakashi hadn't said no during breakfast, but he hadn't really responded at all. He merely told Sakura to watch Sasuke and that he would be on guard duty until lunchtime when he would switch with Sakura. The man had just left Naruto to his own devices, and Haku didn't exactly have the heart to tell Naruto that training should wait if his sensei wasn't going to interrupt. Haku really had to wonder at the recovery of Uzumaki. Any kind of physical training would potentially go by faster if Naruto worked hard at it. So what are you teaching me? Some kind of cool kenjutsu? How to turn water into an awesome sword? Suiryuden no jutsu? Naruto asked, following Haku down to the beach as he tried to guess. Physical training should be held off for now, I think. Haku answered, besides, my taijutsu and kenjutsu aren't actually the best. I'm really not that strong, so I mostly rely on speed to use shuriken jutsu and ninjutsu, he explained. So you're going to teach me ninjutsu? Naruto asked hopefully, since shuriken jutsu was technically a physical activity. Well, yes, I mostly only know Suidan ninjutsu however, and I don't know what your affinity is. Haku said, hoping for Naruto to expand on that. What's an affinity? Naruto asked, not expanding on that. Naruto-kun, you're aware of Seishitsu Henka? Haku asked, stopping just short of the water in surprise when Naruto shook his head. Oh, well, there are 5 basic natures, corresponding to 5 elements. Many ninjutsu fall under these elements: Suidan, Kaden, Futon, Raiden, and Doden. Most people's chakra have an affinity towards one element. Because of my blood I have dual affinity to Suidan and Futon, allowing me to combine the 2 elements to create Hyoden, he explained. So I can't use Suidan unless my affinity is Suidan. Naruto frowned. Well, no, you can. Some powerful ninja are even known for learning multiple, or even all 5, basic elements without the use of a Kekkei Genkai. Haku assured. Great. So you'll teach me some super cool Suidan no jutsu? Naruto asked, looking excited. Naruto-kun, please let me explain. While it is possible, ninjutsu outside of your affinity are harder to learn as well as costing more chakra, and it is generally better to learn some Seishitsu Henka before learning such ninjutsu. Haku began. Practicing with such ninjutsu will teach you the basics, but it will be slow going. The boy lectured. I've never even learned any Futon no jutsu due to Zabuza-san not knowing any to teach me. My Hyoden was borderline instinctual and most of the ninjutsu I have had to create from scratch without true instruction. He tried to placate. Wow, Haku, you must be a genius. Naruto praised, causing the older shinobi to blush, but I don't really know my affinity, and you said I could get the basics down anyway, so I'll just work hard to learn them all, he said with determination. Haku nodded and stepped out into the shallows of the water. Then I shall try to teach you Kurigakure no Jutsu. It's practically an academy basic in Kiri and should get you into the basics of Suidan. Plus being able to bring cover with you that seems like a natural phenomena is good for infiltration and stealth missions, he said, encouraging Naruto to step into the water with him. It was shallow enough to only make their feet wet where he stood. Naruto followed the older boy. The hand seals for this ninjutsu are ox, snake, and then ram. Try to push your chakra into the water as you mold it. Haku instructed, demonstrating the hand seals slowly and then watching Naruto practice. As Naruto attempted the jutsu, Haku took note of 2 things. First, that Naruto had terrible chakra control, and second, that Naruto had a lot of chakra. It was visible as he molded it and splashed the water around with an expulsion of chakra. Some of it did turn to mist to his credit, but it was still not a good first try, and Naruto clearly knew that much. Haku had to wonder if Naruto even realized just the sheer amount of chakra he was expending just attempting this D-rank ninjutsu. An hour later, Naruto was still trying under the instruction of Haku, although most of the instruction at this point was, please use less chakra, from the older boy who had become drenched over the hour even though he had stepped out of the water to allow Naruto to practice. He had intended to provide a demonstration if Naruto had failed, but while the fervor Naruto tackled training with was admirable, it had also splashed Haku relentlessly. Naruto continued practicing until around lunch when Haku interrupted. Naruto-kun, we should head back for now. What? But I still haven't got it. Naruto complained, wanting to continue and not wanting to admit he was getting tired. A short break for lunch then, but it seems your affinity is not towards Sweden, so please do not expect to learn it in a day. Haku warned, you are still recovering after all. Light training with food breaks will allow you to make more progress for now. He tried to bargain. Naruto didn't look happy with it, but he agreed. After lunch Naruto continued practicing Kurigakure no Jutsu, and continued to practice until the day the bridge was finished. Out of his team only Kakashi noticed, and kept quiet to avoid Sasuke bothering him for instruction on ninjutsu. With Gato dead the people of Nami no Kuni were no longer afraid, and with prices on materials and food down and spirits up, the bridge didn't take much longer to finish. Haku could tell Naruto was annoyed he hadn't yet learned the ninjutsu, but his chakra control was slowly getting better. Tazuna and his family, as well as the people of Nami, were at the bridge to see off the ninja team that had saved their land. Haku thought it was quite like a story from a children's book. Thank you, you super shinobi really saved us. Tazuna said sincerely, bowing to Kakashi and his team. Haku looked down, guilty for standing near Naruto while the man gave group praise but feeling it would be improper to step away now. Just doing our job, Kakashi responded glibly, waving off the praise with seemingly practiced ease. Ha, it may have been a job, but I'm seriously super grateful. The bridge builder told them, but, this is super sad. He added. Don't worry, we'll come visit. Naruto said happily. You better. Inari said, trembling from suppressing the urge to cry. Inari, you're sad right? It's all right to cry. Naruto said, grinning to hide his own eyes watering up. I'm not going to cry. You can cry too. Inari retorted. Fine. Naruto said flatly, turning around to hide the tears streaming down his face as Inari started crying. Sakura thought they were like twins and was embarrassed to have such a childish teammate. Team 7 left for home, Haku following them. That boy changed Inari's heart, and Inari changed the people's hearts. Tazuna remarked, that boy gave us the courage to actually finish this bridge. Oh yeah, we still need to name this bridge. He continued. I have the perfect name for it. Inari spoke up, the Great Naruto Bridge. He exclaimed. The people of Nami no Kuni agreed, and Tazuna named the bridge. On the road back to Konohagakure no Sato, Naruto was telling Haku all about the village, well mostly just about how Iruka-sensei was nice for buying him ramen, that Ichiraku ramen was the best ramen ever, and that Konohamaru would be jealous of Naruto's adventure. Haku wasn't sure anyone would be jealous of the part where Naruto was hit by an A-rank assassination jutsu but didn't want to spoil the excited mood the blonde boy was in. Haku did learn that Naruto really was close to the Hokage when it was revealed that Konohamaru was his grandson. It did make sense, since Naruto was apparently the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and it would be dangerous for anyone besides the Kage or someone of similar power to look over the one who contained a Biju. From what Haku knew, Jinchuriki were usually regarded as living weapons, so Naruto's kindness and cheerful outlook was rather surprising. Haku also had noticed that Naruto's training seemed stunted, he didn't learn particularly slowly and worked hard yet his taijutsu was sloppy. The chakra control issue made sense, and with his reserves the Kage Bunshin was perfect for him. Yet Naruto seemed woefully undertrained, and quickly corrected mistakes with Haku's watchful instruction. The boy was even learning to adopt some of Haku's taijutsu style, which he'd learned from Zabuza. Haku could only surmise that the boy had been sabotaged, but why sabotage a weapon for your own village? Haku decided he'd ask this, Iruka-sensei, if he ever got the chance, since he got the impression Kakashi wasn't involved until recently, and while the boy had only recently learned to walk up sheer surfaces with chakra he'd apparently learned it with his teammates so their team probably wasn't long out of the academy. I can't wait to get back and get some Ichiraku ramen. Naruto was talking about ramen again, much to Sakura's annoyance, Kakashi and Sasuke's indifference, and Haku's smiling amusement. You're probably going to love it, Haku-chan. The blonde boy continued and Haku halted in place, smile giving way to surprise as he wondered if Naruto had already forgotten. Kakashi and Sasuke stopped to raise an eyebrow at Naruto and Sakura was looking at Naruto in pure confusion. A moment later Naruto stopped too, clearly wondering what was wrong. Naruto-kun, you remember I'm a boy? Haku asked. Of course I remember you're a boy, Haku-cha. Naruto began and halted as he finally realized which honorific he'd used. Oh good, I was worried you'd forgotten. Haku said with a shaky smile, trying not to laugh at Naruto's blush. I knew you didn't get pushed back in graduation. Sasuke suddenly said, which caused Sakura's brain to hit the brakes as she remembered the event Sasuke was referencing. What? I did too, Naruto shouted. Also I don't want to remember that, why do you? The blonde ranted, trying to use anger to hide his embarrassment. Pushed? Haku asked, turning to Sakura for some kind of explanation. Don't ask. Sakura answered, covering her face with her hands. At this point both Sasuke and Naruto had stopped talking, their argument stunted by the fact neither wanted to actually discuss the incident, so they were just glaring at each other. Kakashi raised a finger. Oh. He said, his eye crinkling, giving away the wide grin hidden beneath his mask. Naruto likes pretty boys. He said, having found the correct words to embarrass everyone. Sasuke took offense to being called a pretty boy. Haku blushed as he realized the implications of that. Sakura was angry because she was usually the object of Naruto's affections, so Kakashi had technically called her a pretty boy too, and Naruto was red in the face with anger and embarrassment. No, I like girls. Haku just looks really girly. Naruto defended, which just caused Haku to blush even more and look down in embarrassment. Haku knew he did look girly, but still. Oh, so it's just Haku you like? Kakashi asked, clearly thoroughly enjoying this, much to his team's horror. No, I mean, yeah, I like Haku, but not like that, even if he is prettier than Sakura. Naruto tried to explain as he just dug deeper into his hole. What? Sakura screeched. Even Sasuke palmed his face, embarrassed for Naruto's stupidity at this point. I mean, Naruto started to attempt to dig himself deeper, but Haku gathered his willpower and rescued the blonde boy from his own words, swiftly clamping hands over the boy's mouth. Naruto-kun, please stop talking. Haku said, struggling to keep his tone even. Ah, young love, Kakashi said, turning back to his book and continuing down the path as Haku and Naruto both flushed. Sasuke shook his head and followed after Kakashi. Sakura looked like she really wanted to punch Naruto, but after some deep breaths turned away and stormed after them. After a few moments Haku released Naruto. Aw man, Sakura's going to think I'm gay. Naruto said, and Haku just sighed. You only have yourself to blame for that impression, Naruto-kun. Haku said simply. Does this mean I shouldn't call you Haku-chan? Naruto asked, and Haku blushed again. That is, people would get the wrong idea, but I do not mind. Haku said quietly, hoping the others wouldn't hear. He really hoped Kakashi's giggle was due to the book. Haku glanced at Naruto and noticed that while the boy was still embarrassed, he had a mischievous grin that indicated he'd noticed Haku was embarrassed. Great. Let's not get left behind then, Haku-chan. Naruto said, moving to catch up with the others as Haku barely stopped his jaw from dropping in surprise and his blush deepened. Kakashi Hatake, you are one of my finest jonin. Hiruzen said, gazing at the man with a stern look, you have fought for this village from a young age, and I personally know the depths of your loyalty. Which is why I am willing to overlook that you have brought a foreign shinobi with clear signs of Kurikage no Sato training if you explain yourself. Hey, come on, old timer. Haku-chan is nice and he wants to live here and help protect his new home, right, Haku-chan? Naruto interrupted with a grin. Sakura glared at Naruto, wondering how could he be so stupid as to interrupt, while Sasuke was just baffled that this was who was becoming his rival. Haku could scarcely believe Naruto actually spoke to the Sandaime Hokage like that and just shivered as the man's gaze moved over him. Hiruzen himself was just wondering at Naruto referring to Haku with a suffix reserved for girls and a male pronoun. Well, Haku? Hiruzen asked after a moment, and the boy realized the man wanted him to answer Naruto's question. Oh, yes, Haku suddenly exclaimed, I would like to humbly request to live in your village in refuge from a hostile home. He explained in a more subdued tone and with a bow, still shaken up by Naruto getting away with speaking to the cage like that. Hostile home? Hiruzen asked, putting his hands together beneath his chin. I lived in Mizu no Kuni. I bear the Hyoden Kekkei Genkei. I received enough instruction to survive on my own from a sympathetic shinobi, but due to purges against those who bear Kekkei Genkei, I have no love for my homeland, and seek a home where I will be safe from such persecution. Haku explained on request. Hiruzen narrowed his eyes and glanced at Naruto and Kakashi. Well, accepting a refugee from a nation we are at peace with could upset such peace. Although we in Konohagakure no Sato tend to regard our clans with powerful Kekkei Genkei in high prestige, this is more due to their backgrounds in founding our village. The Sandaime explained. However, he continued before Naruto could interrupt again. Should one of my ninja sponsor you, I will allow. Naruto refused to not interrupt. I'll do it. The genin volunteered, happy to help. Hiruzen considered finishing what he was about to say but decided it would do no harm and Naruto could stand to learn to take responsibility for his words. Very well then. He said with a smile. Judging from the way Kakashi was amused, he guessed there would be no harm in it. Haku, do you accept? He asked, wondering if the boy would ask for further clarification or understood already what was happening. I accept his sponsorship. Haku responded. The smile seemed genuine, so he was hopeful. Then I shall accept. Congratulations on becoming the vassal of Naruto Uzumaki and being accepted as an apprentice genin. Hiruzen said with a smile, causing Kakashi to chuckle. Vassal? Naruto asked. Isn't that a clan thing? Sakura asked. Any shinobi can take vassals, it's just only clans usually bother. Sasuke explained. He was Uchiha after all. Most people generally don't want to be the vassal of one ninja. Kakashi added. As your vassal, Haku is effectively under your command, and not just in military matters. Hiruzen began. Effectively, you have mutual obligation. You are expected to be responsible for Haku, and in exchange, he is expected to do as you say. So it's practice for when I'm Hokage. Naruto exclaimed, surprisingly confident in the idea. Haku wasn't sure how to feel about that. Kakashi and the Hokage could tell the boys had no idea what they'd agreed to. I suppose it is. Hiruzen agreed with Naruto with a chuckle. The people down the hall will have the forms you need to fill out for claiming a vassal. Kakashi, you stay and give the rest of the report. The rest of you are dismissed. Sasuke left with Sakura trailing behind asking him for a date, and Naruto went down the hall followed by Haku to fill out the paperwork. Well, Kakashi, Hiruzen asked when they were gone. Haku is no threat to the village, I think. He latched onto Naruto quite quickly. Kakashi explained. It seems he had a rough life, so Naruto being the little ball of sunshine and niceness seems to make it easier on the kid. Also, that vassal stunt will probably help him too. He continued at Hiruzen's raised eyebrow. Used to taking orders? Hiruzen asked. Something like that, but there shouldn't be a conflict of loyalty. Kakashi answered. The Hokage frowned. You aren't going to explain it, are you? I'm afraid there is nothing more to add to the report. Kakashi answered. He knew that the Sandaime would guess that the sympathetic shinobi Haku had mentioned was Zabuza, so he was relieved when Hiruzen decided to trust his judgment and dismissed him. Haku and Naruto sat in Ichiraku ramen. Haku was now the vassal of the younger boy, and had noticed that it was close enough to what he intended to do for Naruto in the first place, only now the Uzumaki boy was also responsible for Haku in turn, so he was determined to be on his best behavior. Which is why he was absolutely not glaring at the scarred Konoha shinobi sitting on the other side of Naruto when no one was looking. Definitely not while they were all distracted by Naruto's retelling of his adventure in Nami no Kuni in between mouthfuls of ramen. So now I've been learning some ninjutsu from Haku-chan. Naruto seemed to have finished his story by the middle of his fourth bowl, Haku and Iruka already done eating. Haku was just glad Naruto had somehow completely skipped over the part where Haku was Zabuza's accomplice or any classified information. Oh, so this young lady is Haku-chan? Iruka asked. Haku wasn't sure how Naruto had managed to skip over the point where Haku was a boy. He wondered if that had been on purpose. Actually, I am a boy. Haku corrected. Naruto didn't even skip a beat while eating, so Haku still was not sure if it was on purpose or not. Oh, but, Iruka wasn't sure how to respond, and just looked at Naruto. Naruto-kun likes to refer to me as Haku-chan, because he thinks I am prettier than Sakura Haruno. Haku said with a smile, sounding quite pleased with himself. Haku was pleased to embarrass Naruto. It sounded to the others like he was pleased with the situation, so Iruka and the Ichiraku chefs seemed surprised and Naruto coughed and spluttered, having to stop eating to recover. Iruka decided to give Naruto a second. Ayame was just looking between the flustered Naruto and the smug Haku in surprise, and Chuki followed Iruka's lead. You can't prove I said that. Naruto revealed he had indeed said that. Maybe I'm just making fun of you for being a girly boy. He added, trying to turn the embarrassment on Haku. Iruka almost decided to be the voice of responsibility. Now Naruto, there's no shame in finding comfort in the arms of a fellow shinobi in the field. He decided to tease his former student instead. I did not, Naruto declared, hiding his face with the bowl of ramen. It's true, I merely tended to his injury. Haku said to wind down the conversation. Kakashi-san was the one inside Naruto. Then bring it crashing down. What? Iruka, Ayame, and Chuki shouted at a grinning Haku. Haku-chan quit being weird. Naruto demanded. That was an accident. He added, then winced at the shout from the other three and hastily amended, I jumped in front of an attack. It's the injury Haku-chan was talking about. Wait, Naruto, why didn't you mention getting hit by friendly fire? Iruka asked, concern evident on his face. It wasn't that bad. Naruto tried to placate. Kakashi-sensei aimed it at someone else and I ended up in between with a Shunshin no Jutsu. He explained, assuaging most of Iruka's concerns. I see. So Haku was still in the area from your first meeting and nursed you back to health. Iruka guessed, which is why you fell for him. Happens to a lot of injured warriors and nurses. He added with a grin. No, Naruto attempted. Naruto-kun, wouldn't you rather train? Haku asked in an attempt to change the subject. Iruka was impressed. As sloppy as the subtlety of the subject change was, Haku had really nailed Naruto's area of interest. Didn't you just get back this afternoon? Iruka asked, deciding on not making it easy for Haku. Yeah, but we only walked, and I just ate, so I'm ready to go. Naruto declared, thanks for the food. He told the ramen chefs, reaching for his wallet, I'll come back for seconds after training. He promised with a grin as he paid for himself and Haku. Good lad, paying for your date. Chuki said with a smirk, not wanting to miss out on some last-minute teasing. Surprisingly, it was Haku who blushed and Naruto just laughed. He's my vassal. I'm responsible for him. Naruto said as he and Haku left. Iruka was surprised at that. He thought that part of the story had been embellished. It did explain why the boy was allowed into the village. Iruka wasn't even sure it was a good idea for Naruto to have a vassal. He determined to talk with Kakashi and the Hokage. Naruto and Haku found a training ground with some water and targets. They ran through some muscle warm-ups while Haku considered the village so far. Iruka seemed nice, but could be hiding his nature. Naruto had clearly been sabotaged, and not by Kakashi as far as Haku could tell. Also, as a complete 180 from Nami, the general populace seemed to treat Naruto almost like a leper. The boy was mostly avoided, but Haku had caught one or two glares from angry older people. Konohagakure no Sato was safe. There seemed to be plenty of food, and the training grounds were large, but Haku couldn't help but hate it. So what are we doing first? Naruto asked, breaking the Hyoden wielder out of his thoughts. How about a taijutsu spar? Then we'll see how your shuriken jutsu is. Haku asked. He'd never had to train anyone before, but he remembered how he was trained well enough and Naruto needed no encouragement, only instruction. Naruto nodded at the suggestion and took on a fighting stance. It was less sloppy than it used to be, had less openings since Naruto actually raised his arms to defend his torso now. The two made a seal of confrontation then dashed at each other. Haku opened with a light left jab that Naruto caught on his right forearm and powered through with a right straight. Haku weaved to the outside of the arm and attempted a front kick with his left leg which Naruto bunted with his right leg. Then Haku stepped in, got his right leg behind Naruto's left and pushed against Naruto's guard before his right leg could touch the ground. Naruto rolled back, got to his feet, and tried a jumping kick that Haku dodged to the outside of. Haku moved in as Naruto landed and delivered a light jab to his unprotected back as Naruto twisted to defend himself. Haku noted that Naruto was getting better as he stepped away from Naruto's fists, and the boy was energetic. Haku was just a bit too fast for him still, but as a result Naruto was learning to defend himself better against faster opponents. Haku glanced a right punch from Naruto on his left arm and stepped in to jab him in the chest with his right fist. Naruto may have been getting better, but Haku was fast. That should be enough for now. Haku stopped the taijutsu training short since he hadn't seen Naruto's shuriken jutsu yet. Naruto looked at the targets and threw some shuriken at them. Haku determined that Naruto was of the throw a bunch of them and if most hit it's a good distraction school of shuriken jutsu. Haku decided to teach Naruto better accuracy. Try one shuriken at a time, and really aim at your target. Throwing multiple like that is good for caging and moving targets. Haku lectured, watching carefully and correcting Naruto's throwing technique for the rest of his shuriken. Gradually over the next few hours, Naruto improved. It confirmed further to Haku that Naruto had been sabotaged in his training. Haku shuddered to think of how bad the boy had been before Kakashi got to him. Soon it was getting dark. Naruto didn't even seem to notice the sun setting, so Haku decided he would have to get the boy to stop training. Naruto-kun, I think that's enough for today. You should show me where I'll be staying from now on. Haku said. Naruto blinked owlishly in response. You're home. Haku explained, trying not to be embarrassed. Naruto blinked again, then formed a hand seal. Then there were 6 Naruto and 5 of him were running off. Right, yeah. Home. Let's eat ramen again first. I promised after all. Naruto rambled. Haku was getting to know Naruto, so he knew something was odd about that but decided not to worry for now, figuring he'd let Naruto have his apparent favorite food for dinner. After another batch of ramen, with less teasing this time, Naruto and Haku were standing outside Naruto's apartment as Naruto fiddled with the key. Haku wasn't sure why Naruto was fiddling since it was obvious he only had one key. Eventually Naruto put the key in the lock and opened the door. Inside 5 more of Naruto were still cleaning. Haku decided that was a fair use of Kage Bunshin, but really wished Naruto had thought to do this before. He didn't really blame Naruto, but the blonde probably should have guessed where Haku would be staying earlier. The clones dispersed and Naruto walked in. Aw man, my plants. He said sadly, looking over his unwatered plants. At least the place was tidier than he'd left it. Haku noticed Naruto had one bed. He should have guessed that since he was a young genin who lived on his own. Haku checked the fridge and cupboards. The fridge was empty and the cupboards were full of instant ramen. Haku considered that Naruto might have a problem. After checking that, Haku found a spot to get comfortable. What are you doing? Naruto asked. You only have one bed. Haku explained as he sat down. You gotta sleep in a bed. Naruto said, then realized what he was saying. Haku took some satisfaction out of Naruto blushing. He did not take satisfaction from Naruto's sudden and mischievous grin. Besides, Haku-chan, we're both guys. The blonde said slyly. This was a competition Haku was happy to lose, but after much insistence, which ended with Naruto declaring he'd just sleep wherever Haku did anyway, it seemed Haku would be unable to avoid the embarrassing situation. The next day Kakashi showed up late to the team meeting. "I got lost," he excused lazily, ignoring the protest from Sakura and Naruto. "So how are you settling in?" he asked Haku. "Naruto's bed is comfortable," Haku said with a straight face. To his credit, Naruto tried not to react, but he did blush, which gave Sakura the wrong idea. Sasuke didn't seem fazed. Kakashi smiled under his mask and considered who to embarrass more. "That's nice. Now we should get a mission so he can afford to feed you." Kakashi decided to file the information away for later. It would be entertaining to bring up in front of someone who would get the wrong idea. The Jonin lead the four to the mission office. The system for a vassal ninja going on missions with their lord was simple. The vassal followed their lord. Naruto could have Haku do missions independently and receive the pay, but he was a genin, so without a jonin or chunin they could only accept D ranks. Kakashi went back to taking D ranks for the team. Over the next couple of days Naruto and Haku did more training, mostly Naruto while Haku supervised, and Haku did grocery shopping for Naruto. Haku had not enjoyed learning that Naruto was completely surprised at how cheap Haku had acquired said groceries. He hadn't gotten that many things on sale. The boy wondered if the villagers wanted Naruto to kill them. Haku had also altered his outfit a bit to avoid looking like he came from Kurigakure. Not exactly major alterations, he still wore a battle kimono, but didn't bother with a turtleneck anymore. He kept the choker. Haku had gotten a battle kimono with the spiral symbol he'd noticed on Naruto's jumpsuit after learning it was the symbol of the Uzumaki clan. Naruto meanwhile had finally gotten the basics for Kurigakure no Jutsu and was already eager for more ninjutsu to play with. Haku tried to get him to practice stealth and shuriken jutsu to make use of the mist, which Naruto did, but the blonde genin kept asking for another ninjutsu to practice. Haku was happy to begin teaching him Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto wasn't a terribly slow learner and it made Haku feel useful. "The seal is tiger," Haku instructed. "Aren't Kage Bunshin better anyway?" Naruto asked as he struggled to get even one functioning clone to come out of the water. "Well, sort of," Haku agreed. Kage Bunshin require far more chakra, but are a perfect physical clone, while Mizu Bunshin are a tenth of the strength of the ninja who made them. However, Mizu Bunshin cost far less chakra, and can be used as mobile sources of water for other suiten ninjutsu, he explained patiently. Naruto nodded and kept practicing, Haku's words spurring the boy to push hard. The water was shaky at first, but when making multiple Mizu Bunshin his chakra spread more evenly and eventually a group of 5 Naruto shakily stepped out of the water. They weren't perfect, and Haku could tell the Mizu Bunshin from their blonde creator easily, but they had the shape and movements down. Haku was surprised at the speed Naruto was picking up this one. He knew that after Kurigakure no Jutsu any other suiten no Jutsu would come easier as his chakra had adapted to water, but Naruto was picking up Mizu Bunshin quicker than expected. The blonde did not see it that way and groused about his imperfect clones, throwing himself into the training until he got the jutsu down. It took Haku reminding Naruto to eat to get him to stop training when it came to ninjutsu, and while he didn't slack off in other areas of the training he didn't push himself harder than Haku did in those areas either. The Jinchuriki was surprisingly stealthy for someone who wore a bright orange jumpsuit. His aim was getting better, and his taijutsu was much better. There were certain bad habits that would take ages to train out of his taijutsu still, but at least he kept his guard up now. Even with Haku training him, it did not take Naruto long to get bored of D-rank missions, being that they were effectively chores. "We want another C rank," Naruto said, pointing at Kakashi when he arrived that day. Sasuke and Sakura nodded in unison, making their agreement with being bored chores apparent. Haku just stood behind Naruto. It had taken Naruto less than a week to get bored of D-rank missions. "We'll see," Kakashi answered flippantly. "How has Haku-chan been fitting in?" he asked, and Haku frowned. He did not like anyone but Naruto calling him that, and he refused to admit what that implied, especially not out loud. "I've acclimatized fine," Haku said truthfully. He didn't really like the people, but he did like Naruto well enough and it was a comfortable place to live. The boy was actually surprised at how little trouble he'd gotten from local ninja. Word had traveled that he was a vassal, he could tell from overhearing some whispers, but he'd mostly been let alone. "Naruto-kun must be a good pillow then," Kakashi said, clearly enjoying his chosen torment. It was like tea and I for kids in his opinion. "I am not," Naruto protested, fueling Kakashi's enjoyment further as he led the team to the tower to collect a mission. Kakashi wondered who else to embarrass. "You may not borrow him." Haku decided to turn it on Kakashi. "Don't worry, he's all yours." Kakashi was not so easily outplayed. Haku was embarrassed again, not only from the constant insinuations, but from being outplayed by Kakashi yet again. Haku usually ended up embarrassed more often than Naruto, but only when the insinuations went over the blonde boy's head. This was not such a case. Sasuke was just trying to tune it out, but couldn't help be silently entertained by Naruto being tormented by Kakashi. Sakura tried to look above the situation but was laughing at Naruto on the inside. In the mission office, Kakashi requested AC rank. The Hokage raised his eyebrow at that but looked at the options. Well, this one needs to be done. The old ninja said, another escort mission. This time it's a man named Shibuki, Shunin and head of Takigakure no Sato. He explained. How is escorting the leader of a hidden village AC rank mission? Sakura asked. Taki is rather small, but neutral and well defended against invasion. Most don't bother to make enemies of them. Hiruzen explained. Kakashi nodded. Sounds like a much more normal C rank. He said, jinxing it entirely. The Hokage lit his pipe and took a drag of tobacco. Well, that and if the mission does encounter enemy shinobi, then your team is used to it. He added. Hell yeah, we're the elite genin team. Naruto agreed eagerly. Well, most of us. Sasuke said, shooting Naruto down. You should not be so unkind to Sakura. Haku deflected calmly before Naruto could get mad at Sasuke. I'm sure she'll do fine too. He added. Sasuke decided not to bother correcting Haku about which team members he was talking about, and Sakura frowned. Haku had kept it mostly hidden, but he did not seem fond of Sakura. It was obvious to Kakashi, who witnessed the pale boy defend Naruto verbally from Sasuke by making it obvious that he thought of Sakura and not Naruto as the weakest link, more than once over the past few days even. If Sasuke noticed, he gave no indication of caring, and Kakashi wasn't interfering since it seemed like Sakura might have started taking her training a bit more seriously in response to the jabs that Kakashi couldn't help but think were catty. Haku's reason for disliking Sakura was simple: the girl was not nice to Naruto. Haku did not begrudge the girl for being weaker than her teammates, but it was an easy target whenever Sasuke tried to put down Naruto's weakness. Alright, so where is this Shibuki? Kakashi asked, pulling the conversation away from any potential argument. The man has been busy, negotiating with myself and the various clan heads around the village. He'll be ready to go first thing in the morning. Hiruzen explained. Don't be late. He added, looking at Kakashi. Kakashi's eye crinkled in that way that indicated he was smiling under the mask. I won't be. He lied. To his credit, Kakashi was only half an hour late this time. Naruto and Sakura voiced their complaints anyway. Kakashi considered this inconsiderate. The team met Shibuki himself, who was slightly older than Haku it seemed. The man seemed like a common long-haired young man, except the fact anything sudden and loud, like a bird taking off, scared him. Sakura wondered how the hell this man was supposed to be the leader of a hidden village. Sasuke wondered who let the man be a chunin, and Naruto just felt bad that this guy apparently outranked him. Even Haku wondered if the man might be better suited to being an advisor or taking a desk job. Despite what any of them thought of Shibuki, escorting the man home was their C-rank mission. This isn't your guy's first C rank, right? Even if he was slightly rude. They've already had their first C rank. Don't worry, they handled fine. In fact, it's why we have a +1. Kakashi said, gesturing to Haku with the +1 comment. So how bad was it? Shibuki asked, earning confused looks from all but Kakashi. The copycat Jonin grinned under his mask. Worse than your average first C rank. It even got reclassified as an A rank. He said with some genuine pride. A rank. They're genin right. I only paid for AC rank after all. Shibuki was clearly surprised at that. We're super awesome, Naruto declared, not actually answering the question. Rank doesn't directly correlate to threat level. Sasuke explained. We were probably trusted with this mission to show some respect and trust to your village. He added. Shibuki raised an eyebrow. Giving you this mission shows trust to my village. He asked. Sakura looked confused too. There are 3 different Kekkei Genkei here. Sasuke stated as his way of explanation. This seems like something that shouldn't be discussed. Haku decided to quietly interject, and no one disagreed with the statement. Kakashi was surprised with Sasuke. He knew the boy regarded his Sharingan highly, but it hadn't occurred to him that the boy would think highly of other Kekkei Genkei. The Jonin wondered if it had something to do with losing to Hyoden once before. Sasuke hadn't asked for a rematch yet, but Kakashi had noticed the boy training harder. The sensei of the team had also noticed Sakura had started trying to keep up with Naruto and Sasuke during team training. The girl was very disheartened by how quickly a rift in power had appeared between herself and the boys. Kakashi had noticed Naruto's improvements too. The boy was even getting faster. Presumably Haku had something to do with that. If he could get Sasuke and Naruto to replicate the teamwork they'd shown in Nami, then they might be able to actually beat someone on Haku's level without scary demon chakra. Unfortunately, it seemed only life or death situations could get those two to work together. Training just didn't seem to pull it out of them in the same way. The road to Takigakure no Sato was peaceful, but boring. Also, Shibuki kept being startled by birds. As Shibuki and his Konoha shinobi escort approached the entrance to Takigakure no Sato, two small children approached. Shibuki-sama. The children chanted cheerfully in unison as they ran up to them. Shibuki jumped at the first shout, but steeled himself. "Ah, hey kids, I don't have time to play right now," he said. "Ah, we weren't going to ask to play." One of the children spoke, the young boy first. The younger girl spoke up. "We're supposed to clean up the water before we play," she said sadly. "We just wanted to say hi to you, Shibuki-sama." She added, "Well, luckily, I brought these ninja with me to help with that," Shibuki said with a grin. "Hey, hold on, this was an escort mission, not a chore mission," Naruto declared, opposing the idea immediately. He refused to believe he'd basically just taken the equivalent of a D-rank mission outside of the village. Sasuke spoke up next. This wasn't in the mission parameters, he said coldly. He didn't want to pick up trash when he could be training. "Alright, but we're adding this as an extra D-rank mission, payment expected." Kakashi spoke up, figuring it would be good for the kids to clean up some and they couldn't refuse if it was a mission. Shibuki nodded in agreement and encouraged the two children to start. Haku shrugged and moved to take a spare garbage bag from the kids and start helping. Sakura followed his lead. Naruto and Sasuke glanced at each other, then Kakashi. Kakashi got the strangest feeling they were sizing him up. He smiled at them from beneath his mask since he knew that would be silly of them. Kakashi shooed his hand. "Get to work, boys," he told them. As the two boys trudged to the lousy chore mission, a bird screeched. Shibuki dived to the ground to dramatically take cover, and Kakashi accepted a letter delivered by bird. I should be back by the time you guys are done here, something just came up," Kakashi said after reading and burning the note. Shibuki frowned but nodded his acceptance. Silently, the village leader wondered how the Uchiha could think they were showing trust as Kakashi took off. "So does your village have any heroes?" Naruto was trying to make small talk with the younger children to make the work go by quicker. "Yeah, Shibuki-sama," Shizuku, the young girl, said. "Him. Why not a real hero? Like me," Naruto said, showing he had indeed let the mission in Nami go to his head. "Don't make fun of Shibuki-sama," Hamatsu demanded angrily, the young boy scowling at Naruto. "Yeah, you're no hero. Shibuki-sama is," Shizuku agreed vehemently. Sorry about Naruto-kun's attitude. Haku interjected to try and soothe the situation. However, despite his manners, he is the most heroic shinobi I've ever met, he added, causing Naruto to blush. "This shrimp," Hamatsu, smaller than Naruto, asked disbelievingly. "Who did he save then?" Shizuku asked, equally suspicious. "Naruto-kun saved me," Haku said honestly, smiling as he took silent joy in Naruto's embarrassment. "Naruto had been begging for it though. You just have to say that because you're his girlfriend." Shizuku tried to guess. "No, I'm a guy." Haku shot the idea down without his smile faltering. "It was impressive. Naruto-kun saved my life by pushing me out of the way of an A-rank assassination jutsu, a blade of lightning chakra, and took the hit with his own body. It was more impressive that he said that so plainly, to children no less." Now the kids were impressed with Naruto, which was what Naruto had clearly wanted, but he was still embarrassed by the way Haku had chosen those words. Soon enough the sun was lower in the sky and the work was done. Shibuki was trying to hurry Team 7 and Haku to go home. "Couldn't we just wait around for Kakashi-sensei?" Sakura was trying to negotiate. "I know his lateness well enough. I need to get these kids home, you should go." Shibuki wasn't budging, oddly enough. "Well, why don't we come with you to escort the kids home?" Sakura suggested. "No, your mission is done, so just go home already," Shibuki snapped, losing patience with surprising speed. "Fine." Sasuke agreed with Shibuki, turning to leave. Sakura looked surprised but moved to follow Sasuke. "Why?" Sakura asked, curious. "The entrance to their village is nearby, they must not want us to see it." Sasuke guessed, which is odd since our villages are supposed to be allies, he said rather hotly. "Yeah, we're allies at the moment, but who can be certain you won't betray us in the future, or have the knowledge stolen somehow?" Shibuki retorted. "Hey, we escorted you home and even helped clean up. Show a little gratitude," Naruto demanded, getting angry at Shibuki for his attitude and getting into his face, much to the annoyance of the children. Before it could escalate further, a strained voice called out, "Shibuki-sama." A civilian woman called out, looking pained and out of breath. "They attacked out of nowhere," she said, which was generally how ninja operate, so not bandits. The woman fell into Shibuki's concerned arms, revealing a kunai in her back. The younger children were distraught and Sakura quickly checked on the woman while Haku looked around. "It's not too deep, so she should be fine, just unconscious," Sakura said, beginning first aid. "Alright, well now we have to stay and help," Naruto declared, turning on Shibuki as if to dare the man to disagree. No you don't. Shibuki disagreed. Sasuke jumped at them, knocking both Shibuki and Naruto down, staring towards one of the many waterfalls. Haku landed in a crouch next to them with his Senbon ready. Naruto noticed Haku and reached for his kunai, looking around to see what was actually going on. Out from behind the waterfall a group of shinobi came and tossed a hail of shuriken at them. Sasuke jumped ahead, eager to prove himself and test his mettle. The Uchiha drew a pair of Fuma shuriken, keeping one hidden, as he jumped. Affixing ninja wire as he landed and tossing them, pulling the wires to deflect the smaller shuriken. Using the wire Sasuke directed the Fuma shuriken into the enemy shinobi, one of the large bladed weapons carved into the limbs of two of the enemy ninja, but the other got stuck when one of the blades sunk into the chest of a third. One of the shinobi, a missing nin from a Megakure no Sato, had started hand signs. Sasuke activated his Sharingan greedily. Rat, dog, then ox, the ninja hit the water, tapped two fingers into the water, then whipped the still loose Fuma shuriken out of the air. Sweden. Subin. As the man said this he used the whip to deflect some of Haku's Senbon out of the air, protecting the last two missing nin that Sasuke hadn't taken out. Then Naruto was there. Haku's eyes widened as Naruto just appeared in front of and above the enemy ninja. His hands were still in the tiger seal when he appeared in a puff of chakra smoke, indicating his use of Shunshin no Jutsu, and the kunai was between them. Naruto threw his kunai at the surprised missing nin, who dashed back to avoid it and shot out with the Subin, the blow of which caused Naruto to disappear in a puff of smoke. Haku glanced back to see Naruto had disappeared somewhere and was attacking with Kage Bunshin and Shunshin combinations, supplemented by Shuriken Jutsu. Three more Naruto appeared to attack and the three missing nin dodged the kunai and retreated as their apparent team leader took out the Kage Bunshin with his Subin as they retreated into the waterfall. Naruto landed next to Haku. Damn it. He grumbled, clearly incensed by Sasuke taking out more than him. Sakura, get the kids and the woman somewhere safe. Sasuke took charge. Shibuki, show us the way and we'll help deal with this. Shibuki frowned but nodded. Sakura had bandaged the woman up and was moving to obey Sasuke. Haku was surprised, but fell into step without issue. Shibuki lead the three Konoha ninja into Takigakure no Sato by the secret waterways. It was a nice enough place, seemed peaceful. Haku and Sasuke both noticed it was too quiet and no one was around. Naruto eagerly got back on land, looking around and idly complimenting the village aesthetic. Haku followed Naruto and looked around warily. Sasuke moved in after Haku. Shibuki held back then went back into the waterways without alerting the three boys. Sasuke and Haku both tensed as they noticed something wrong. Sasuke turned to face where he thought he'd heard something, putting his back to the water source. Haku leapt to Naruto's side, drawing Senbon and landing in between Naruto and the direction Sasuke was facing. Naruto realized something was going on and palmed a kunai in his right hand. They all jumped back as a group of Bunshin of the missing nin from a Megakure melted out of the ground near them. Naruto took the initiative this time and jumped into the fray to test the solidity of the Bunshin. His kunai went through one without resistance and he grinned. This one is fake, Naruto declared confidently before the Bunshin stabbed him in the left arm, leaving the kunai there as it laughed at Naruto's enraged counter-attack swinging through it harmlessly. Haku glared at the group of Bunshin and tried to figure out how to overcome this jutsu before Naruto got even more hurt. Sasuke activated his Sharingan, it's Genjutsu. He declared, get back Naruto, I'll deal with this one, you and Haku go find Shibuki, the Uchiha ordered. Naruto jumped back, pulling the kunai out of his arm and holding it in his right hand alongside his own. Fine. He agreed, clearly not happy. Haku didn't look happy about it either, but followed Naruto back into the waterways. Sasuke pulled out one of his own kunai, tossing a pair of shuriken at the real body of the missing ninja as he did just to prove his eyes could see right through the genjutsu. The man dodged easily but stopped maintaining the genjutsu, so you saw through my Kasumi Jusha no Jutsu. The man asked, you kids are something else. Are you going to talk or fight? Sasuke asked impatiently. Settle down, the man responded, don't they teach you brats respect in Konohagakure? He asked, it's polite to know each other's names when we reach this skill level, the man said with a smirk. I don't need your name, just your head. Sasuke shot back and leapt at the man, only to stop as another Subin wrapped around his midsection. Well too bad, I'm Murasama. The kunoichi that got you is Hisame. I'm guessing from those eyes that you're Uchiha. Murasama spoke smoothly, it wasn't a question. Naruto and Haku moved through the waterways, unaware of Sasuke's new plight. Haku was pretty sure they were lost. It took them a lot of wandering around, but they finally found someone, and it was just the man they were looking for too. Shibuki was holding a jug of water and looking at it somberly. Shibuki, there you are, Naruto called out as he and Haku rushed over. How did you two get here? Shibuki asked after he got over jumping out of his skin at Naruto's voice. We were looking for you. Naruto said with a grin. We were lost. Haku said honestly, why do you look at that water with such sorrow? He asked before Naruto could object. Shibuki frowned and held up the gourd-shaped glass jug. This is Ayu no Mizu, he said. It looks like water. Naruto said, not getting the big deal. It's more than water. This water is tapped from the sacred tree once every 100 years. Shibuki began, it's said to increase the chakra those who drink it tenfold or more. He explained, shocking Haku and Naruto. Tenfold. Naruto voiced his shock and Shibuki nodded. In exchange, the lifespan is reduced by the same amount the drinker's chakra was enhanced by. Many died drinking this water, including my father. Shibuki explained, it's the duty of the leader of Tokigakure no Sato to protect the Ayu no Mizu, he continued as he curled in on himself, which is why I can't let them have this. Naruto and Haku frowned. Haku checked outside to see what the situation was. It was pretty bad. Naruto moved to see what Haku was looking at and his frown became a scowl. The enemy had hostages, the whole village it seemed, including Sakura and the kids. Even Sasuke was tied up. Are you really just going to sit there and hide like a coward? Naruto asked, not liking Shibuki's behavior one bit. Haku was surprised Naruto was calling the man out, but if there was ever a time to do it, now was the time. I need to hide. They can't get the water. Shibuki said frantically. Your father, he drank the water to protect this village, didn't he? Naruto asked. What do you know? Shibuki growled, confirming the theory. I know that sounds like a hero to me. Naruto said, turning away. It was the actions of a fool. Shibuki spat, getting frustrated with the topic. Those kids look up to you. Guess they mistook you for your dad. Naruto said as he tightened his headband, hero or not, your dad sounds like my kind of guy. He finished as he jumped to get in position to attack, Haku following behind. Shibuki sat there stunned. Haku-chan, stay hidden and move into position to take out the enemy near the hostages. Naruto said as he tested a vine, I'll be the distraction. He finished with a grin. Haku nodded and used Shunshin to dash between cover. Naruto took a deep breath and jumped, swinging on the vine. I am Naruto Uzumaki. He shouted, getting the attention of everyone, you are about to witness my ultimate. He began only to be cut off by his own yell of shock as the vine snapped and hurled him into the water. A missing nin from AIM with a mask asked, who is this dumbass? A team made of those other two Konoha nin, there should be a fourth somewhere. Murasama answered. Hirasame, Murasama, deal with it. The apparent leader of the group spoke up. I'll deal with you. Naruto shouted, mist pouring from the water on his position and obscuring visibility. Kurigakure no jutsu. Hisame questioned, surprised to see the jutsu used by a Konoha genin. Hirasame and Murasama moved towards the water. As they did, a swarm of Naruto Bunshin rushed them, throwing shuriken ahead of them as they moved. Hisame suddenly gave a pained cry as she dived to the ground, a pair of senbon in her left arm. She rolled to avoid more senbon and jumped when she was on her feet to avoid another handful from Haku, who dashed back to land on the surface of the water. Hirasame and Murasama had jumped back to avoid the shuriken from Naruto's Bunshin, and returned volley to pop some of them, revealing Mizu Bunshin as water splashed from their defeated forms. Hirasame growled and rushed to engage the clones in taijutsu. Hey, Suion, what's the plan here? Murasama asked, moving to stand over Hisame. I'll handle this one, keep an eye on the hostages. Suion, the leader of the group, answered, forming a blade of water around a kunai without the use of hand signs. Sasuke and Haku both frowned at that. Tokigakure Ryo, Mizukiri no Yaiba. The man named the jutsu as he dashed at Haku. Haku was pushed into a game of dodging. Suion was good. Haku decided that the man was not as good as Zabuza as he danced around the blade on the surface of the water, but couldn't land a good hit with his senbon and couldn't get the space to perform a ninjutsu. A hit and run type. Suion asked as he deflected a handful of senbon with his watery blade, a shame you're up against me then. He taunted confidently. Haku didn't answer and lead the man towards a spot shimmering under the water. Meanwhile Naruto had started mixing Kage Bunshin in, and armed with kunai they were pushing Hirasame back with numbers. Murasama moved to the soaked battlefield to assist. As soon as Murasama kicked down a Mizu Bunshin, Haku was there, dashing out of the mist and running through hand signs. Murasama and Hirasame both widened their eyes and glanced back to see Suion looking in confusion at something under the water. Suion was confused. 1 second he'd been chasing Haku, the next he was gone and some senbon had actually grazed him. The man looked down and saw what looked like a polished rectangle of ice. Haku landed near the two aim missing nin, Haijutsu, Sensatsu Susho. The boy intoned and the water rose from the ground, shaping into razor-edged needles as it flew at Hirasame and Murasama. Sasuke mentally cursed himself for not having his Sharingan active for that one. The two targets jumped to avoid the needles and landed near Hisame as Suion dashed over. The girl isn't good at close combat, the leader advised. I'm a boy. Haku corrected without missing a beat and a straight face as a group of Naruto Bunshin used Shunshin to appear surrounding the missing nin. Half of the Bunshin used Henge. Haku's eyes widened as they took the shape of smaller versions of the Kubikiribocho, and the other half of the Bunshin grabbed their new weapons and swung. Suian was much better at Kenjutsu and destroyed the weapons coming at him, causing water to splash as the Mizu Bunshin lost their form. Haku jumped at them. Hirasame ended up taking a glancing hit to his right leg but destroyed the swords coming at him with a kunai. Murasama managed the same but suffered a glancing blow to his right arm. Then the clones jumped them with kunai and were popped with puffs of smoke as Suian carved through them, looking annoyed. Haku landed near the man, hand in a seal unfamiliar to all but Sasuke, but this one he couldn't copy anyway. Ice started rising from the water around the missing nin, then halted as Haku coughed. Suian had stabbed the boy in the stomach. Haku-chan. Naruto shouted, the real one dashing out of cover. Suian scowled and moved to rip the water blade out of Haku, only to be halted by the young teenage grip on his arm. Naruto pulled out a kunai and made the tiger seal, hopping next to Suian with Shunshin and thrusting at the man with his kunai, an angry glare leveled at his target. Suian was forced to take to kunai on his left forearm with a grunt. The man scowled and kicked out, catching Naruto in the chest and knocking him back. Suian then punched Haku with his wounded left arm, removing his grip and knocking the bleeding boy down. I've had enough of this, Shibuki. Suian called out, if you don't bring the Au no Mizu I'm going to start killing kids. Haku didn't hear a response and tried to get up, checking where he was stabbed. It seemed non-lethal, luckily enough, but he'd need treatment. Idly Haku hoped Takiger had Iryo Ninja, just in case. Naruto was not even slightly as calm and rushed Suian again, only to get kicked in the face by Kirasame. Suian ignored this and approached Shizuku, taking out a kunai as he did. Murasama took a turn with Naruto, rushing to pummel the boy now that he was shaken. Naruto made 5 Kage Bunshin to defend himself against the older 2 shinobi. Murasama moved in to punch the Naruto he assumed was the real one with a left straight as Kirasame lashed out to kick through the group with his right leg. Murasama had to pull back to block 2 Kage Bunshin, but countered with quick jabs and circled Naruto. Kirasame kicked through 1 Bunshin, but the other jumped and the third ducked before the final Naruto caught the kick with an attempt to block and was knocked into Murasama who slammed an elbow into his back. The remaining Bunshin were dispelled by a snap kick combo from Kirasame, Naruto-kun. Haku called out in concern, shakily pulling himself to his feet. Hisame approached Haku, clutching the injury he'd dealt her and glaring down at him. The kunoichi delivered a kick to Haku's solar plexus that sent the wounded boy rolling. Naruto growled and moved to rush Hisame but Kirasame intercepted to give him a kick to the solar plexus too, which Murasama followed up with a right hook that knocked Naruto to the ground. Sakura was crying out for the enemy to stop and Sasuke was just glaring, you've wasted enough of my time, Shibuki. Suian called out, ignoring Sakura as he lifted his blade above his chosen hostage. Haku gasped in pain and looked over at Naruto, you got no time to worry about him. Hisame spat, moving to kick the boy again. Before she could, a whirlwind of water slammed into her, knocking the kunoichi flying onto her back. The same spinning vortex kept going, slamming into Kirasame and Murasama too. Then it disappeared and revealed Shibuki, let the villagers go, Suian. You wanted me right, he asked with more confidence than he felt. Naruto got up and rushed to Haku's side. Well, here you are. Now where is the Au no Mizu? Suian responded, seemingly unconcerned by the visible chakra coming off of Shibuki. I drank it, so I'd have the power to defeat you. Shibuki declared, Takigaka Ryo, Mizukiri no Yaiba. He created his own blade of water to match Suian. Well, you can't have drank all of it, and it will do you no good. You're weak. 10 times nothing is still nothing. Suian taunted, deciding to move away from his hostage and deal with Shibuki personally. Naruto was helping Haku bandage himself and both kept an eye on the fight. It was a simple enough sword fight in Haku's eyes. Unfortunately, Suian was actually pretty good at Kenjutsu. The missing nin disarmed the village leader in spite of the power-up, and Shibuki was subsequently stabbed in the gut. Like I said, Suian taunted, you've got no talent for this life, having a bunch of chakra doesn't change that. He finished as he let Shibuki fall to the ground, the shroud of visible chakra dissipating. Naruto decided he didn't like those words at all. Naruto already really didn't like Suian, in fact he hated the man for stabbing Haku at this point. Suian ignored the glare from the genin and checked Shibuki's pockets, how convenient, he brought the water with him. The man declared before ripping the cork out with his teeth and starting to drink. Haku frowned as the situation went from bad to worse, he looked at Naruto and saw the anger and hate the younger boy directed at the enemy. The Hyoten wielder didn't want to overpressure the boy, but he might be their only shot here unless Kakashi decided to show up. Naruto-kun, Haku began, getting the attention of the blonde instantly, his hate giving way to worry seamlessly. This man will probably kill us if you can't stop him, he said honestly. Naruto frowned and nodded, determination and resolve obvious on his face. Haku smiled as Naruto stood between the man and Haku. With a hand sign there were 20 of Naruto. Suian took notice and stopped laughing, his body glowing with visible chakra. Oh what, you think you have a chance? Suian asked. Shibuki drank the Au no Mizu and even he couldn't beat me, and now I've drank it. The man said ecstatically. So what? Doesn't matter how much you multiply nothing. Naruto mocked coldly, leveling the nin's own sentiment against him. Suian didn't take kindly to that. Suian dashed in and slashed, catching the closest clone as the rest jumped and threw kunai at him. The number of projectiles gave him pause, but instead of dodging or deflecting he raised his free hand and the chakra around him flared, blocking the kunai. He smirked and looked at Haku, dashing to finish the boy off. All of Naruto was there, hands in tiger seal from Shunshin. They all moved to strike with different unarmed attacks. Suian swung his blade and dispelled the cage bunshin, catching the real Naruto with the attack and leaving a gash in the blonde's left arm, on the forearm under the elbow. Naruto didn't retreat and pulled out a kunai to move against the man, thrusting at Suian's rib cage under the guard. Water met steel as Suian blocked and Naruto pulled back to avoid losing fingers as he ducked under the counter swing only to get kicked in the face and launched over Haku. Shibuki, injured as he was, used the fight as cover to get near Sasuke and free the Uchiha from the razor wires keeping him captive. Suian was forced to use his blade to deflect the hail of shuriken as Sasuke dashed to meet him, and Suian went to kick Haku again, only to be blocked by the blonde genin again. What surprised Suian this time was the boy withstood the bone-jarring kick. He hadn't deflected the power, he'd absorbed the kick against his right forearm and hadn't caved under the weight of it. Suian frowned as he jumped back to avoid the kunai Sasuke and Naruto were now wielding as they stabbed at him from different angles before standing next to each other. How the hell are you even alive? Suian asked Naruto. The power boost must be running out. Well, whatever, he said and started chugging more of the magic water. The aura of chakra around the man flared. Sasuke adjusted his grip on his kunai to hold the blade away from himself in a reverse grip and flew through hand seals before releasing a flurry of small fireballs at the enemy. Kaden. Hosenka no Jutsu, he called the attack. Suian jumped back and flared his chakra to make a water wall when he landed on the surface. The man frowned when he noticed shuriken coming through the water, hidden by the flames until they were extinguished. Suian rossed his free hand and flared his chakra, blocking the shuriken with raw chakra. Sasuke ran through more hand seals. Kaden. Ruka no Jutsu, he called as a thin blast of flame shot towards Suian, looking like a dragon as it moved. Suian tossed his water blade and dashed to the side to dodge before rushing towards the two genin. The water evaporated but the kunai within flew at Sasuke, who shifted and deflected the projectile weapon off the edge of his own. Naruto rushed Suian, tossing his kunai ahead of him as he did. Suian dodged the weapon and met Naruto in taijutsu. Naruto attempted to open with a right straight but was countered by a left snap kick to the face. Suian followed up with an right knee into the solar plexus and sent Naruto flying into a brittle rock with a right hook. Sasuke attempted to meet the man with his own taijutsu, his Sharingan allowing him to duck the opening backhand and he moved to punch under his guard only to be forced to twist to dodge a sudden knee and he barely managed to block the roundhouse kick that came after. The force of the kick knocked Sasuke back. Just give it up, brat, I'm unstoppable now. Suian declared, breathing hard. No, this power is clearly draining you. Sasuke noticed. So we just have to outlast you, which means you're out of luck, he declared as the rubble of the rock that had fallen on Naruto stirred. The orange-clad genin growled as he stood up. The red chakra was finally starting to be visible. You're pissing me off, he yelled at the enemy. Haku was relieved. It wasn't as overbearing as that fateful day on the bridge, but it might be enough. Suian looked startled and angered, jumping away from them towards the water. Then I'll just drink more, he declared defiantly, but his declared plan was ruined by a senbon that shattered the jug. Suian turned his glare on Haku at that, who smiled at him from his position behind Sasuke. Naruto wasted no time and gave chase, leaping at Suian with his enhanced strength and speed, Taiju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The boy yelled. A sudden mass of orange flew towards Suian, all of them encased in red chakra auras. Suian scowled. I already told you, it doesn't matter how many of you there are, you're nothing, he roared, trying to hide the fact that the red chakra had shaken his resolve as he rushed Naruto. The mass of red glowing boys met the blue glowing man and threw wild punches at each other, but the logistics were heavily against Suian. While the man was strong and fast enough to pop the bunshin, Naruto was enhanced by the Kyuubi chakra, and so were his bunshin. Suian was struck by many punches, each one surprising the man with the weight of them before he was finally knocked back from his attempt to countercharge the genin of Konoha. Suion flew back and slammed his head against an exposed tree root, dazing him, and Naruto fell into the water. That kid actually did it. Shibuki sounded surprised, much to the offense of Naruto, who was swimming to shore. I did tell you we were showing your village trust by this team coming here. Sasuke reminded. Of course I did it. I never back down. Naruto shouted as he pulled himself out of the water. Do you have any Iryo ninja? Haku asked, worried about his injury. Shibuki winced at the reminder and nodded with a smile, moving to untie his villagers, starting with a pair of medics who swiftly checked over Shibuki and Haku. After ensuring that their injuries hadn't damaged any internal organs, the move to check on Naruto and Sasuke. Sasuke accepted it without much fussing, but Naruto, oi. I'm fine. My body is healing itself, heal Haku-chan. The blonde was more worried about someone else. Haku and Naruto were bandaged up in the end, and so was Shibuki. The leader of Tokigakure led the Konoha ninja team to the entrance to meet with Kakashi and explain the situation. I hadn't thought of it, but technically that was Haku's first C rank with the village. Kakashi said after everything had been explained. Shibuki sighed. Damn it, I knew that felt like a first C rank curse, he said. Sakura was pretty sure that was a myth. Sasuke was starting to believe. Haku had no idea what they were talking about, and Naruto just nodded as if he did know exactly what was being discussed when he didn't. So what rank? Kakashi asked Shibuki. Easily a rank. Shibuki answered. I'll send the pay by messenger within a week. He added quickly. Kakashi shrugged. Well, sounds like you kids had quite the adventure. Now it's time to go home, he said, ruffling Naruto's hair. Naruto accepted the sign of affection.